Hey, good morning, Renee Gould. Welcome to my second podcast of Slaying the Dragon. How do you feel about that journey where you were called into action?
How do I feel about it? I mean, it's
probably... have you got one journey now that you feel like you would like to share? I know you've probably got quite a few, but just one.
Yeah. I'm currently in one at the moment, and sort of just coming up and out of it. So it was pretty much perfect timing when you asked me to come on here and share about this stuff with you, because it had been something I'd been contemplating about talking about on social media or putting it out there. And that is not like me with anything personal like that. And so it was probably about a day or two before you actually asked me whether I'd be a guest speaker on here. I was like, I probably should be talking about this stuff. And I kind of pushed it off to the side. And then, you invited me on and I accepted the invitation. So here we are.
And when we're going through the hero's journey and we're in amongst it, are you feeling a little bit like David and Goliath? Like, are you feeling minimized and you're beating the monster, or how are you holding your energy at the moment?
Well, at the moment, it's quite different to how I was holding it a few months ago. So I guess this process of the dark night of the soul for me kind of happened at pretty much the beginning of the year. It was probably about February. And I just started a new level of training, shamanic practitioner training. And, I knew that it would be big and I knew there'd be stuff, and there always is as we move through our stuff. But yeah, this one come in like a massive, massive curveball. It just like whammoed me from the side. And it was interesting because on one of the journeys, you're probably familiar with the hollow bone, the hollow bone process. And basically, it's...
For those that are not familiar with it, can you just very briefly describe what you're talking about? I think that might be valuable to share this. Yeah.
So the hollow bone exercise is part of, I guess, a energetic alignment or connection of connecting with spirit and basically being the hollow bone, like letting our stuff get out of the way. So basically anything that is inside us that needs to move and shift in order for that clear channel to come through, it's gonna make its way through. So anything that's kind of sitting there that could be somewhat of a distortion between coming through me when working with someone has to move, it has to heal, it has to alchemize. So it's, the hollow bone is essentially the hollowing out of the things that, the stories or the limiting beliefs or things like that can play out through the individual or through me. So through that practice, when aligning and calling that in, it was literally the day after, I literally felt my life just went boom, like that, like all of a sudden. And at the time I was like, no, what, like, the synchronicity, it even blew me away. But that was like the catalyst and the detonating bomb, and watching facets of my life literally just explode and crumble. Yeah. And so it was definitely not a fun process, very painful, very challenging, brought me to my knees many times, brought me to a place where I thought I couldn't get up off the lounge anymore. And I just, I'm done. I was like, I'm done. So basically with that process, my relationship broke down, my health, my work, like it was a flow on from there. So like my health then required surgery, which then required me to step out of my role in my role as a healer and in my work. So it meant that, relationships were down, health was down, work was down, finances were down, because obviously being self-employed. So it's pretty much like every
It's a tough initiation, isn't it, for a healer or for anyone? But when you're doing the work to bring healing to others, it's got to come to you, through you, and from you. That's a tough call. So, and you're in a vulnerable place right now because you're now coming out of this journey using your own resources, the hollow bone. Yeah. There's only one way up, and that's with your own resources. So can you now just share a few of those resources that you have pulled on? Mm-hmm. Maybe, you know, what was the first resource that you had that you used to help yourself, for one, own the hollow bone journey, not give it up?
Yeah.
And how did you manage to get yourself back up off the couch, if you like, or back off the lounge?
Yeah, so for me, it didn't go from hollow bone to straight into how am I going to get back up. It was the allowing of the destruction to happen. So there had to be some sort of surrender, which took me a long time, if I'm honest, because my usual way of being previously has been to fight. And to resist and to challenge it back and to kind of bring something back to counter it. So say, for example, if it was something like, oh, I'm not well, or I'm in pain and I can't move, and it's like, no, I'm right, I'll get back up. So there was that, you know, old way of being of my mind to kind of fight and push through, where that just wasn't working this time. And so what it required was an absolute surrender. And even in the surrender and the descent down into that darkness for me, you know, I was still trying to find ways that I could opt out. I was still trying to find ways to go, that's deep enough, that's dark enough, I can't go any deeper. And so what can I do to distract myself to not fully go there, or to not fully feel it, or to kind of like hang on to the sides as I'm being sort of pulled down. So yeah, it was a battle. It was an honest battle for quite a while. And I guess what started to help me was just a few people pointing out to me, you know, and hearing me in the state that I was in and going, this is so not like you. And, you know, I'm hearing a lot of these comments. And I guess luckily for me, I have quite a few, you know, beautiful friends and support networks and even mentors that were assisting me somewhat through this process. But I will say, through this dark night of the soul, it was the most alone that I've ever felt. So even if there was some assistance there, which might have come through a friend saying something like, what would you say to one of your clients that come to you if this was? So I was getting a lot of reflection coming back to me. And even though in that moment all I felt like saying was F off, like I can't, don't even play that card with me, because I'm just not there. But there was a gift in that. And what I actually, when I truly sat with it and had a look, it was, what I would give to them would be just complete love and just being present with them. And I realized that was actually nothing that I'd ever truly given myself. So, you know, there would always be elements of that. And I think that I'd love myself and care about myself and do these things. But, you know, I have always been the type to kind of put a lot of other people first and things like that. So it was very challenging for me, because there was this deep calling and yearning, and I was trying to look for it outside myself, and nothing.
Can't find it out there, do you? No.
Nothing touched it. And the only way, like, I basically just, you know, hand on myself and went, what do you need? What do you want? What do you need from me? So there was like in that process, there was like a reparenting, there was like inner child stuff, there was just being brutally honest, you know, because a lot of it, what I was witnessing from myself through the resistance, through the fight, through all those things that I was so used to doing, was that the voice inside of that was actually my teenage self. It was my angry teenager, and it was the one like the forefront, and she'd just come out and she'd just play out and have her way, and adult me's over here kind of just letting her run amok. But basically, when I really sat with that, and if any of my mentors watch this, they'd laugh, because they've walked beside me watching this journey happen, and they're like, there she is again, there's that angry teenager, and I'd be like, like, here it is. And instead this time, and instead of me getting frustrated with that and going, why won't she just like get back in a corner where, go back there, go back where you were, like, I'm me now, I'm an adult, I'm a woman, and all of these things. But even in that, there was resistance. There was like wanting to deny part of her and wanting to step into this part of myself. But through that resistance and part of denial, it was actually just pulling me further away from myself. So basically just went, honey, what do you need? Like, what's better? So it was that giving that.
Coming home to you. To your soul.
Absolutely.
Reconnection, reparation.
Yeah. So that was a process, and again, it was a dance. It was like, it wasn't like it was just like I recognized it and it was done and gone, but it was something that I had to keep revisiting, because she just kept rearing her head. And then I'd look under there and be like, what is it? And I'd be like, anger. And I'd be like, what are you angry about? And then it'd be XYZ. And I'm like, what's under there? And it's like, there's grief, there's sadness, there's all these things. And I was just like, I literally felt like I was being buried alive in this process, like literally buried alive. And at times just going, I actually don't know how I'm going to get out of it. So, I wasn't seeing anyone. I wasn't really talking to anyone. I wasn't socializing. I wasn't working. I was tending to my physical body that had just been through a surgery and just doing it all on my own, pretty much. Like, I did have some support. So, but on the inside, I truly felt, alone. The only thing that I will say that I did keep going at the time, and it was because of my promise to, the group of people that I was journeying with in one of my mentoring groups. So the only thing that I kept going was my Meridian medicine courses. And that was just the online, group of people online. I'd be sharing the teachings about traditional Chinese medicine, the seasons, the cycles, all the philosophies. And, I'd take them through journeys and things like that. And even that, I'd be like, I just can't even, and I started going through things like feeling like a fraud, feeling not good enough. I should know better. Why am I sick if I'm the healer? Why if I've got this? All of those ego, bullshit, loud stories that were going on. And, so that was something, but taking them through that, I actually realized I was taking myself through the journey of the seasons. And what it gave me was such a deep embodiment of the work that I do. And I already thought that I had it. But it just, every time I go around, the seasonal wheel, it tends to take me deeper and deeper each time. And I was literally watching the unfolding. And I think that's the only thing that kept me engaged and holding there without feeling like I was being completely swallowed up whole. So, because from the beginning of the year, it was like the end of February, early March, and it went boom. And so that's autumn, and it's all about that letting go.
You're releasing.
Yeah.
Didn't it come up beautifully for you?
Yeah, like so synchronistically. And then, transitioning from autumn into winter, and it's literally hibernation, the deepest of yin, the most dark, the most, and it was, I was on the descent with her. I was on the descent with the seasons and cycles with Mother Earth. And it's only been through spring, obviously, like with that seed, with that little bit of yang that starts to come through, with that burst of light that starts to want to come up and through, have I started to feel like I'm not even going to say feel like myself again. I will say feel like a different version of myself. And
so summer starts really on the 21st, 22nd of December in the solstice. Is it the solstice?
Yeah, the solstice, yeah.
Is it the 21st in Australia in Sydney, or is it the
22nd? I think it's
22nd. Yeah. I think there's always that question, isn't it? Can you feel that you're nearing that time? As you're coming from that transition of spring into summer, what does that mean to you?
So the transition from spring to summer is, spring is about just that tiny bit of the seed, like the crack of the seed, and starting to kind of reach towards the light and the sun again, coming out of that.
The roots are now getting deeper and going down.
Right. So there is that extent as well. And I was reflecting on this before we jumped on this call, actually, and I went far out, like what the seed actually goes through. We don't really, we just think seed, new life. And we tend to, well, I personally will tend to just think seed, new life and new whatever. But there's such a process in that. Like without the deep, dark soil, without the nourishment from Mother Earth, you've got to place that seed deep down in the darkness. And it has to surrender to the darkness, and it has to surrender to all the deep, the deep, dark ways, I guess. And then there's a process of where spring starts is literally that cracking. Like the seed has to crack.
It's like a chrysalis, isn't it?
It is. And I literally at times could feel a cracking. I felt like I was broken. Like literally being broken. And I don't want this to sound so extreme where people might go, oh my gosh, I don't want that to ever happen. But this is just the way that this, I guess, initiation and dark night of the soul on this time round has happened for me.
A little bit like the egg, isn't it? Like when the egg cracks, it gives new life.
That's right. But, we can't
that's what's happening to you and to the seed.
Yeah. So we can't go from the egg to new birth.
That's right.
Without the cracking. So there was literally that cracking. So to answer your question from spring to summer, it's just about that newness, that growth starting, but it's not in
the fragility of the new leaves and the new growth, isn't there?
And we've got to tend to it, right? Because if we don't tend to the seed and water it and nourish it and keep checking in with it, it's not going to make it. It's not going to make it into full bloom. So that's been the process for me.
But there's a gentleness involved in this process right now.
And that's been a really new thing for me, being gentle with myself. I'm usually really gentle with other people, and I feel
but you soldier on.
Yeah, I'm actually so tough on myself, like brutal, and just it's just not serving me. It's just not.
So now you're gentle.
Well, I'm getting there. There are still moments, I guess, I flick into
What does that gentleness look like for you? How do you be gentle for yourself in such a vulnerable time?
So if something is playing out for me, if there's an action, a behavior, a way of being that I think is not good enough, or I'm not kind of happy with it, rather than going like, oh, you've just done this, and really degrading myself, I will just say, and I think of it like, how would I talk to a child? And I say, are you okay?
And that is that inner child healing that I think we really all need to love and accept, that gentleness of that child when she falls over or when he falls over, to reassure rather than criticize, just support them and say, come on, you can get back up again, let's have another go.
And that's exactly what I've been doing. And so some days that might look like, for me, I can't get off the lounge, and it's like, that's okay,
pull your doona up and have a doona day.
If I can, whereas if that was to happen to me before, what's wrong with me? What's happening with me? Why is it, and go into kind of that victim sort of mentality, where now I just kind of own it a lot more.
So there's acceptance coming through by the sound of things.
Yeah, there is. There's definite acceptance. And as I said, I'm not right out of the end yet. And in fact, like after I had that, message come through, or that epiphany, I really need to share this info, because I was feeling myself coming out. I had another like whack, and I was back down, and I'm like, all right,
it's like an initiation. It's never just one smooth step, is it? It's like a series of steps that I think people think, oh, we've done through that, or when's this going to let up? And I don't know if it ever does. I think life is the toughest journey there is on Mother Earth. I think it really is the biggest initiation, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we fall down, and this is about falling down, answering the calling, and you answered the calling
Yeah.
What made you answer that calling to do the practitioner training course? What was giving you that driving force in the beginning?
Well, look, I'd already been sort of working shamanically anyway, and I had been in like a long-term mentor trainee sort of dynamic with my mentor, and then we went into more official training.
And who's your mentor? Are we allowed to bring that to the table?
I think she would be okay with a plug. Beata Alfoldi is one of them.
How do you spell that? B-E-A-T-E?
A-T-A.
Yeah.
Alfoldi is A-L-F-O-L-D-I.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, so she's over in Portugal now. She was in Mexico for a while.
Wow.
And she also used to live in Australia. So I'd been going through this deep journey with her anyway. But little did I know that actually like initiated it into the training would, because I thought I had my shit sorted, really, you know.
Well, yeah. How many times have we thought that?
Well, that's the thing. And I guess that's been the biggest motivating factor for me jumping on here, is to share this stuff in hope for people
that's exactly
because, you know, quite often in my work, I would hear people say, oh, well, you wouldn't know. Oh, you're so strong, or you're this, or you're that. And they'd have like...
put you on a pedestal.
Yeah. And you know, I'd quickly shoot that down and go, are you kidding? You've got no idea. Like, you know, when I look at it, the reason I got into all this stuff
from your own trauma and your own, to bring healing to you and your own journey. Yeah, 100%.
And to learn about it and go, well, what was being offered to me at such a young age when I was really unwell and I had so much trauma and so much stuff, it wasn't cutting it. And so I had to seek other ways outside the norm and the box, which started to bring, I guess, the medicine in for me. So it's been like this. But then they go, oh, you've obviously healed and you're, you know, this, that, and the other. And it's like, well, yeah, we might think we do until the next layer of the onion or until the next
exactly.
soul. And it's like,
oh, wait, there's more.
Yeah. And I guess for me, and the advice that I would give for people, the biggest thing that's helped me through is learning all of this stuff, because then I've got the tools that are there to support. Right. Do I always want to work with them? No. Do I, you know, like when it's there, I'm just like, I just can't even, like, but I always know that I always come back to it. And it's usually when I'm feeling my worst, it's when I've let some of my practices go to the wayside. And even if it's so challenging to pick them back up again and go, well, if I start again, like what's the process going to be? But that's always been the way through for me, is through those practices.
Fantastic. So, it's interesting. I was meditating or going into that feeling of here I am going full circle, and it sounds like you're going full circle, but the circle is a man-made object or construct, isn't it? Whereas the spiral means that you're coming with new evidence and new tools, new resources, new awakenings and awareness. So that spiral is like another lap around the sun, if you like.
Absolutely.
And the four seasons take a different approach because you've got new awareness. And I think that's why we go down deeper each time we do the season journey. And the season doesn't have to be in the traditional seasons as we know them. They're our own personal seasons, aren't they? Yeah. Can you share a little bit about that for you? And maybe even if we start with spring, because that's where you are now, and you've done the seasons before. So you're now with experience and you're now on that cycle of the spiral. You're not the circle. You're not like the drum behind you. You're now journeying up, and there is that newness. You don't know what to expect. And there's a vulnerability in that, isn't there?
That's
like everyone thinks you know your stuff, but you haven't done this journey before like anyone else. This is new for you.
Yeah, it's definitely a new layer. And yeah, it's really interesting because I have been contemplating on seasons, cycles, circles, and spirals. So it's actually been coming up for me. And I've brought that in as part of one of my practices, is the spiral dance. So actually allowing my body to move in a spiral motion, to actually like conjure that energy and actually bring it through my body.
Very serpent-like, isn't it? when you bring that Kundalini energy up as well. And that can be massively releasing too.
Well, yeah. Funny you bring that up, because that's actually that's what's happening for me at the moment. So it's very new, and I don't know that I have too much to share on that.
That's okay. We might get you back to share.
Well, we might be able to
do part A and part B here.
Yeah. But let's just say definitely the serpent energy is around me at the moment. And in fact, again, at the beginning of the year, actually, this was just before the beginning of the year, I had made a new medicine rattle. And it was in preparation for the training for the shamanic practitioner training. And I went there and I was going to make my beautiful rattle with Bastian McPhee, you know Bastian?
Yeah.
And went down there and I was like, yeah, and I had in my head, I want to make a deer rattle and I want it soft and gentle and loving and this and that, and thinking of the air being womb space. So I was projecting, like my mind was going, this is what I want. And I went and I made, and it completely transformed in front of me. And I had so much resistance coming up. Even Bastian was like, oh, you literally watched the head of the rattle as it was drying. And of course, everyone's come out and she said, Renee, yours isn't ready. We have to put yours back in. And I went, oh shit. Like even with that, I knew there was something in that. And when it went back in and came out, literally a serpent's head, like,
wow.
And then finding the snake skin to adorn the rattle with. And
beautiful.
Then, like, I mean, and it's taken me a little while to actually be able to work with that rattle. I keep going back to like one of my
transformation, isn't it? Life and death and beginnings and endings and a whole cycle in itself.
Yeah, it is. So that's been interesting watching that play out. And even then, you know, not even consciously fully aware at the time, but watching it over time and taking me deeper into that spiral. Now I'm actually going, oh, I know what that rattle is about and what that medicine is about for me right now. So when I have that awareness,
skins, is it? Do you think?
Sorry,
shedding skins.
Oh, it's shedding.
And loving your new skin.
That's
fresh, new, beautiful skin that's shiny and clean.
That's
right.
It. That's that thing from spring to summer. It's like, what's the newness and the full bloom coming through for you? And yeah, that is something, like I'm going through the transformation on the inside, but also will be having that reflect on the outside through the change of my business, through change of name of my business, through like I haven't put it out there yet because it's not quite ready yet. But
you can announce it when you're ready.
That's right. But
today you're Renee Gould.
Yeah, that's right. I'm Renee Gould today. But yeah, so that's something there. But yeah, to answer your question about the circle, like I think even with me teaching about the seasons and the cycle, say if I rewind back to the beginning of when I was teaching it and my level of awareness of it as well, it was quite circular. And then each time as I'd go, okay, we're at, you know, autumn again, or at autumn again, or at autumn, because each year I've realized that as I journey with them, my journey would be completely different. So I'm going, well, I'm teaching that it's a season and this is what it will be. But yet each time I do it, it takes me somewhere different inside myself. And I've even had that reflected back with some of the participants that, you know, have done the whole seasonal wheel and went, I just want to come back and keep doing it. I'm like, well, it's up to you. You're welcome to. And they might come in and go for it again. And they're like, I got so much more out of it this time. And so watching them also go through their transformation. So it's really good for me to see on that outer as well, and watching them go so much deeper within themselves, and then having it this time around for me, watching how much it had taken me so much deeper inside myself without the distraction of all of the identity stuff that I'd had that had crashed and crumbled. It took me to somewhere completely void, unexpected, completely dark, completely like blank canvas pretty much. Wow. And it was like, what's on the inside and how can you now bring that through? So yeah, so the spiral is a very intriguing thing for me at the moment. And you know, it's kind of new. So I'm only getting to know that energy and how to work with it and how to bring it through. But yeah, one of the things of being just the spiral dance and letting my body move in ways that maybe it hasn't before, and sensing even the stagnation or rigidity inside my own body or inside my mind. Oh no, I can't do that. Oh, I feel like I'm being too sexual with that, or I feel like you watch the mind jump
That's
in.
the inner critic again, isn't it?
Yeah.
Our own worst enemy.
Puts up a fight, I tell you.
100%.
And so again, it's just, for me, it's just been about that surrender and the breathing and just kind of like letting the body talk rather than my mind.
Well, what do they say? Physiology heals psychology.
Yes, it really does.
We need movement. We if we get stiff and rigid, our energies don't flow. So they block the meridians, don't they? And we can't release energies.
Yeah. That's right.
That's where illness and disease comes from.
That's right. And that's also where, if we stay on the hamster wheel of the circle, we keep perpetuating the same cycle. It literally keeps repeating. And I know that because I've witnessed it. I've felt it for myself.
Yeah.
Here we go again. Here's that same same thing. And I'm like going around like this. And in fact, all along, it's like deep down there going, oi, come down here. And I let go and started to go down. And even though it was challenging, scary, shit, like, I am grateful for it now because I can see what is trying to come through.
And have you noticed a difference in family and friends, or, old colleagues or people in your life as you've gone through this initiation? You've answered the calling to your own soul purpose. You've really gone through the journey. Yeah. The challenges through that initiation have been huge. Yeah. And now you're coming back. You're on the return of this initiation. You're not the same person. Again, it's a bit like the spiral. You're coming back with new energies and an acceptance and a vulnerability, but a power in that vulnerability. And I think it takes courage to be vulnerable.
It really does.
Yeah, it does. And I've experienced that myself a few times. And when we're vulnerable, we don't know. So it's like it brings curiosity to the table as well, because you don't know what you don't know. So to explore that like a child is like being curious. And I guess that's spring again, isn't it?
It is exactly right.
And curiosity.
Yeah. Yeah, and being playful.
We forget to do that.
Creative with it, because that newness is also creative energy.
Yes.
It's a creative force.
100.
And, when we're in more our adult minds or the rigidity or whatever, we can sometimes really
hold us back. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that's probably where like the freeness of the body work and like moving and and going, I don't care. I'm just going to close it. No one's going to see me. I close all the blinds. I do my thing. And it's just let go. Like, no, it's not a show for anyone. It's not anything. It's literally just freeing the body and letting that playful side sort of come through. And just kind of going, well, let's shake it out of the body and stop being rigid. And
we don't know what opportunities and epiphanies and light bulb moments come through in play. I think play is the greatest way of releasing boundaries and restrictions, because when we open it up without any ego, unlimited possibilities can come through, can't they? They open up. That's where innovation and invention and those light bulb moments come through.
Yeah, exactly.
And you've had some aha moments during this time?
Well, I have, because the things that are starting to present or come up for me are not anything that I've conjured from my mind. They've literally spontaneously started happening, which shows me that there was no force or not me going, I want to do this now and I want to, and having that sort of control from that human, mind aspect or the ego. It's just been this experiential, playful thing. And then lo and behold, there's lots of things happening where I'm going, what is that? And just kind of letting it happen anyway. So yeah. And I know when I'm on something like that, when things start to happen and then synchronicities or somebody might reflect something back to me that I go, oh, that must be being felt or perceived out there, or, picked up on, picking up on serpent energy and things like that. So it's it's undeniable. And when we go through these things, even in our own private, lives, that even energetically, we still kind of have that energy that's like, here I am, you know, and this is what I'm moving through. So, but yeah, for a long time, like I've kept a lot of that really held tight and in very, very tight knit circles that it's like, which, you know, is great. And it served me well and it protected me for a while. And
but it also held you back from your true optimum potential, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Like we create our own prison. We think we're keeping ourselves safe and we need security, but when we release the bars of our own prison, what brought that? What came to you then when you had that?
Well, that I guess was the complete tower card of like the drop down of everything, relationship, people that you see, work, finance. So all of those things that we normally would identify ourselves with and say, this is who I am. You know, I'm partner to this and this is what I do for work and this is what I do here. And, you know, all these things that we put out to the world, when all of them just like popped off.
Who am I?
Who am I?
That's a big question.
It was like the who am I? And I was like, I'm not going in. I was full tantruming. Like, this isn't
the child, the teenager.
Oh, yeah.
Can't make me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you want to make a bet?
Interesting, because what I had noticed when I've had that before, because I've had it before, not to that degree, not with all of the things popping off. Yeah. You know, it might be an aspect or a facet that might have gone, you know, and then me go, and then go cling on, how can I help myself? I'm going to call my mentor and have a session, right? Which is great. And I'm an advocate of saying for people, if they need help, by all means, like reach out, ask, get that help if you need. But again, and what we had discovered together was that what was happening was becoming a cycle and a circle.
Yeah.
And she was very much like, here it is again. And so I actually had to let go there too. I had to let go of her, but let go of that dynamic.
And I find that too, like as a healer, we don't want to become people's next addiction, because then we're failing their journey and they don't need us. We need to walk beside them. So it's a do with process, isn't it? Not a do to process.
Exactly.
And they have to do their own work, like you recognized. You have to do your own work and we have to do our own work. And when we can walk beside a person, if they fall over, they can get back up themselves. Like, we can reach out sometimes and offer them a hand, but you know, the challenges don't stop. And I think the teacher or the mentor continues to evolve as well. I think it's a good idea to have different teachers and different mentors in our life, not just have one, because then that becomes a trap.
No, I've had many, and I, you know, even work with some people now, but in a very different way. So I can feel how much I've changed within myself.
Yeah.
But working with, you know, my mentor, with Beata, like one-on-one so strongly for so long, I mean, she was very good at holding me accountable, even at times that, say, the 17-year-old
girl. And accountability can be scary, isn't it? Because you've got no one to blame.
No. So I had nowhere else to
go. Nowhere to go, nowhere to hide, and no one to blame.
No. So
that's all wild and real, isn't it?
Yeah, in I went, and, you know, kicking and screaming and probably having a bit of a tantrum. And I just love her dearly, love her so much. But, you know, coming through this time, it was like, oh, do I? And it was like, it's just in. Like, you got to go in. There might have been like little times of little things, or, you know, friends or whatever. So I'm not saying I never spoke or never reached out, but this was so different. Where I got the medicine from was like inside and in the most, like, in the deep dark trenches.
You know, in amongst the trauma, it's very hard. Our first reaction is to go outside. And I think that's where marketing companies and pharmaceuticals, they've all, you know, really taken, if you like, a lot of advantage over our vulnerabilities, that we get happiness outside of ourselves. If we do this, if we buy this, if we become that, we will be happy. Mm-hmm. But our world doesn't get happier the more we have and the more we do. It's just a distraction from what is most important. And to give yourself time alone in a space, and very often that dark space is when it's like the light pierces the shield, isn't it?
Yeah. And even that for me, like, and even up until now, I've had a little bit of still resistance around, you know, light and dark and all of that, and going, but I want to be, you know, and we have this a lot in the new age and spiritual communities of being love and light, and that's great, and that's whatever. But
that can be a spiritual bypass too.
It can be, and it can be a real denial of self, aspects of self. And so for me, the way that my mind got around that was looking at, you know, again, coming back to my TCM, the concept of yin and yang. Like, you can't have one without the other. Yin, yang, light, dark, this, that, and they're constantly dancing and intertwining. You can't take them apart. They don't function without each other. It's the polarity. And so, but a lot of ownership in the darkness and in my shadow and in all of those parts that I would so strongly want to keep at bay, whether it be my, you know, fire, my anger, or whether it would be going, I can't effing deal with this. I want to numb out. I want to get something that makes me not feel so much. And then leaning in on those things and going, well, you know, that's only going to keep you here. It doesn't actually change what's happening under here. And until we actually take that shit away and you get in there, then it's just going to keep recycling and coming back. Like, it doesn't go away. You know, we might think, oh, I'm going to go just write myself off. Like, I hear this a lot with people. I'm going to write myself off. I'm going to go have a drink and just drink my troubles away. And it's like,
but they don't go away.
They don't. It buries it much more down. And then we have the aftermath of how we feel bad about our behavior or what we did, or did I drink too much, or what did I say? You know, all of the stem offs of the shame and the whatever that come from that. You know, I was going through that too, and not with drinking, but with painkillers. And that was due to being in so much pain physically, but mentally and emotionally and all of that. So through this surgery, and then when I was obviously taking that, because that's just what you do after you have surgery, and me being me, like, I'm not the textbook usual where it can be, oh, you can have this anti-inflammatory or some Advil or some Panadine. Like, I'm allergic to a lot of these things. So it was straight into like a hardcore synthetic sort of opioid. And what I found was, when I was taking it for my pain, which is what's prescribed for, it was also numbing me out from all the rest of the pain. And I went, oh, that's a break. That's great. And then I went, oh.
It can be,
and I had to be really like on it and diligent and really try and break that, because it felt like a seductive energy for me, and just took me out of the darkness for a bit. And it was like, oh, have a bit of respite, and then it'd slowly pull me back in, and then I'd come back out, and then it'd slowly pull me back in. So, you know, we all have our things in the ways that we want to escape out of our pain or out of the darkness or things that we don't want to feel.
That's where addictions come from.
That's right. And that could have very well been a potential for me. Yeah. And so it's something that I just have to thank my awareness and whatever, and go, well, that's a very fine line. So, and it's hard because, you know, with the surgery I've just had, like, I'm going to be going in for more. I'm going to be having more, and it's probably going to be in the new year. And it's sort of coming up to that going, okay, well, you know that, so let's put some things into place that are going to be supportive and nurturing and whatever, because I can't just take some of the general, you know, things. So, you know, I guess the awareness there is the beauty, and go, well, that could be a potential, and I don't want that for my life, and I don't want to numb out. I don't want to opt out. I don't want to half do my job. I don't want to half get through my lessons. I really want to do it all. Like, if I'm here, I'm here, you know.
And be fully present.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, even if there's that thing of going, oh, I want to take that, like, straight away the question, are you in pain? What's the pain? Is it physical? Is it emotional as well? Like, having like these little stops that are there. And admittedly, sometimes I'm like, I will have to have it. Like, there are just times it's just like, that's okay. But I would
say to someone else going through this cycle of, you know, being called into action, and what held you together, or what got you to come back home to your soul, if there was just one thing that you could offer anybody else out there, what gave you that return to self and return to soul to keep you going? What gave you that?
I think gentleness.
Wow.
You know, like it has many stem offs. There would be, you know, the start of the process was letting go, all of that stuff. But I think the thing that it's gentleness and love, like self-love and gentleness, because, you know, usually with those shadow aspects, there's usually, you know, a part of denial and a part of lack of love, the things that we don't like about ourselves or the things that we don't want to admit, you know, and shame and all these things come up. And so we kind of push them away. And if we kind of go, oh, well, I don't want this, or, you know, and have that, we kind of hold it separate from ourselves, from what I've experienced. And I guess
it goes around the cycle and do it
again. It does, and it does it again. And that's right. And so the way that I shifted it this time, and that was also another thing that Beata, like my mentor, had been saying, Renee, you're so hard on yourself, got to be gentle, gentle, gentle. And I'd think, you know, and you know, 17-year-old be like, Jenna, what do you mean? What are you talking about? But I really got it this time. And what it was instead of, because in the initial, I was so hard on myself and just judging myself and berating myself about, oh, I don't want to be an addict. I don't want to get this. I don't want to feel like, you know, I need this. Like I had there was shame, guilt, like there were so many things around it. And like I'm saying it like it was a major full-on thing, and it wasn't. It was just that it was there, and I didn't like what I saw, right? So I worked through it pretty quick, but just having that there and moving from that berating, self-judgment, whatever, into just going, if somebody else, so I'd ask that exact same question, if that was a client of mine that was saying, I actually have this, and coming with so much shame or just embarrassment or whatever, like what would I do to them? Would I stand back and go, oh, what, are you an addict? Are you this? Are you that? Like, no, I would, like, what would I do for them? I would hold space for them. I would say that it's okay.
What would you encourage?
Gentleness, self-love, just like own.
How do you do self-love when you loathe yourself? And, you know, that's when you're in the shadow. What do you recommend that they do? If you could give one tip to anybody else or any of your clients, what was the few, if you had a little basket, a tool basket, if you like, what would you put into your tool basket? And see if you can do it in order of priority.
So self-inquiry, I think, was the first, like asking the question, like being attentive to what was, because, you know, that's usually a stem off, like, or a behavior or an action that's playing out, right? So it's like, what is that? Why? Like, what's happening there? So first of all, for me, was the questioning. So it might be something like, for a lot of the time, I would be hand on heart, hand on womb space, because that's where a lot of the things were going on for me. So I would just hold those spaces and breathe and just say, what's going on here? What are you feeling? And what do you need? So that would be the first sort of thing. And just opening, I guess, conversation and communication to myself, rather than having this battle here. It was more.
You do that with journaling? Is journaling good?
Yeah, you can. Absolutely. Yeah. For me, I'm not much of a writer, but I bring those practices in my mentoring, because some people love that. For me, sometimes I do it. Sometimes for me, it's a bit more automatic writing, or just kind of getting it out rather than having it structured. So I guess any way that you can express what it is that you're feeling on the inside was
sometimes one. I even find making up your own songs in your own space and going into that creativity.
Yeah.
There's no ego, and it's like singing the song or the lullaby to the baby, and you are the baby, and you're reassuring your younger self. Have you ever done that?
That's interesting, because
drum or your rattle.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That has been a practice that I've been leaning in on so much more.
Yeah,
so much more, and not from that place of, oh, this is the rattle, this is the drum, this is how we journey, this is how, you know, from that space. I remember once I sat in with a session with Bastion, and she said to me, and I don't normally like sing or voice or whatever in that way. That's also been something that I'd hold back and only do in my own private, right? And she had said to me, all right, and that was with this new rattle, and she's like, and I was going there for help for a specific thing that I was going through one of the tower card, you know, journeys. And she said, give it voice. And I was like, and she goes, I just, let's just start with the rattle. Let's just shake. Close your eyes. I'm not here. I really want you to feel in and actually give it voice. And I tell you, I have not,
Powerful, can't it?
what came out of me.
Did you record it? It can be a
No,
great idea to set up a voice recording.
yeah.
And because I think sometimes we can't ever recapture back because we're in another zone, but to record it.
Yeah.
And even if there's nothing that comes out of it, that's okay. But to capture it and hear it back, it's amazing how powerful that can be when you actually record a channeling or a journeying.
I might give that might be next on my list to give a go. But basically, like, I thought, not much is going to come out, and it just kept going. It went for ages. And then when we came out, I just looked at Bash, and she just had and I was like, whew, I've never done that before. Like, it really moved her. It moved me. It just moved so much stuff. So that has definitely been huge.
Good.
And I do play guitar a bit, even though I just
I picked up the guitar. I could feel.
Yeah.
I see you singing around a campfire on the beach,
that's totally me. That's totally me. And it's just my own thing, and it's more just to get into that flow state and get it out. It's not for performance.
It's so powerful, isn't it?
It is. And movement, song, sound, vibration, it's all healing and it's all moving, and it's so that's
like the shamanic, the Aboriginal elders, they just get the sticks, don't they? And I think that's just such a powerful releasing, and rhythm is an earth medicine, isn't it? Just it has a rhythm with the drumming with the earth.
That rhythm is what tends to take me into that trance state. And then when we're in that trance state, we're not in our conscious mind anymore, and things just happen rather than the mind going, did I hit that note on key, or does that sound right, or does that, like, it's gone, and it's just like something moving through you and flowing through you. So I've been loving, like, working with my voice, like, that's so new, and hearing it change, like hearing it almost break.
Wow.
And go, where's that come from? Like, far out, from like a constricted sort of like, to like really just, and some days it'll go from that to that, like it'll change. And again, that can be a big reflection on what I feel like's going on inside my body, my mind, my field. And then I'll keep going until I feel it, till I feel it shift. So that's been huge. So self-reflection, the music, song, sound, and the beach for me.
You're fantastic.
Like, being near the ocean is always a reminder of how vast it is. So much is always going on. Even if we feel like life's happening, to us, it's really happening for us. There's so much going on, so much in the depths of that water that we might not be able to see, but so much life and whatever is happening underneath there. But also just knowing, that the tides are continuously moving and changing. Like, there's nothing that stays the same forever. Like, change is that only constant, and just watching that move and flow. It does help. It really helps me to kind of go, well, no matter how much, if I want to control it, I can't. And that these forces that are at play, and there's this constant ebb and flow and movement and change. It's like, you just got to surrender to it.
Just sitting still, even if you can't get to the beach or the beach is not close to you, just to lay on the grass on your back like a child and look up to the sky and just watch the clouds float past. It has a similar feeling, doesn't it? And it's that constant change, and you look at the shapes in the animals and the patterns, and and I think that it does, doesn't it? And it probably brings us back to that childhood curiosity and play.
Exactly. So for anyone, like, I think anything in nature is just, because it gets us to disconnect from the hustle and bustle, and just, our phones and all of that stuff, and just being present with the sounds, the smells, what we're looking at, like all of just, I don't know, it's just an unraveling for me. It's always just so soothing. So any grounding practices. breathing the air, walking even.
I think remembering to breathe is really important. And I think as we get stressed and we're going through trauma, the first thing we tend to do is hold our breath, and we breathe shallowly, or we hold our breath and our shoulders get higher, and we need to just relax. Actually, instead of just relaxing your shoulders, because you can't stay relaxed, you need to tighten them and then let it go. And you can feel the weight come off your shoulders, can't you? You can just let it go.
And it's so interesting, like, that you're saying that, you know, tying it back into TCM again, like the lungs is, you know, it's like they all have their yin and yang partners. So it's the lung and the large intestine that work together. They're attributed to autumn, and the lungs is obviously about our breath and inspiration. So if we're feeling inspired, we take the breath of life in, we want it to flow through our body. Whereas if we're like saying no to life and we're having a shit time, we, you know, shut off from that a little bit, and we get more shallow breathing.
It's such a great point that you're saying, because I think, so what would you say to somebody, what exercises would you give your clients to do at that point? Because I think this is really valuable.
Well, breath work for starters, because it's working the lungs. So just having that awareness, so bringing it in, but, you know, having the understanding that the lungs and the large intestine work together. The large intestine is all about letting go. So it's basically, if we think about the energy coming in, but also the energy coming out, we need to let things go in order to bring new things in. So it's about that, again, another cycle of life that's coming in and going out. Like, we can't just keep breathing in and hold all the shit in. Like, we can't, it won't move, right? It like physically won't move, and then things won't move, and we feel horrible, and then we don't even want to take any more fresh breaths in. So, you know, it would be things like qigong practices, anything that can kind of like work those energies, because there's breath work, there's movement, but also it brings in particular movements that are helpful for you know, opening up those channels or the meridians in the body to encourage that flow to move through. So
swimming, walking,
anything where there's movement,
just laughter, being with a group of friends and sharing a joke and having a good time with a cup of tea is like, you feel like, why don't I do this more often, you know?
100%.
And it's the simple things in life that we often forget, isn't it?
Yeah, because we get so bogged down with the stuff. But like, you know, like they say, laughter is the best medicine. And
for sure.
You know, it, like, I believe that to be true. But I think anything where we're stagnating and not moving, you know, whether that's physically, mentally, emotionally, you know, in work, relationships, whatever, and if it's like this, we need to look at things and like how we can kind of shake it up, not necessarily by tough initiations of having like all your things.
You don't have to go to the extreme.
It doesn't always have to happen like that.
But now you've done this, though, you can look at any opportunity now to say, wow, I'm ready to take myself to the next initiation, because you now know. So you'll be planning your initiations, and life will, you know, throw you the odd initiation when you least expect it, just to make sure that you're doing your own work. It just I think it is something that continues to happen, and you take the learnings and, you know, the newfound wisdom into the next phase. I'm not sure that I'm ready for the next initiation just yet. Well, you know what, here it is. Just saying wait for it to be ready, you'll never do it either, because everybody doesn't. Our basic inner need is like, we want everything to be safe, and we want it to be the same, and we don't like change, and we want security. And you know, our whole world for the last 3 years have been thrown into chaos from the fires in the beginning. And that burning gave us a regeneration. And then we were in lockdown, and, you know, and so much opinion. Everybody had an opinion on what was happening, and there was so much judgment and accusation and assumption, and it really did break down a lot of relationships and families and friendships, and now everyone's back out again, feeling that they've got freedom, but really it's just another distraction.
Yeah, that's right.
And what's going on underneath that, if they could go back to the values that they had that were most important, and that was health and family, and finding that inner peace. They actually had more inner peace during a lot of that time than they have now. Now the stress is happening, and more anxiety and more lack of control. But you can't control the sea. You can't stop a wave from moving.
Nope. And that was part of the biggest thing, like it was my thing of control with all of that, and just going far out. This is so much more beyond me, and all, like, I can fight, I can keep resisting, I can keep.
What does that bring to you? It's like
pain.
Pain. You just, the more you struggle, the harder it gets. If you can relax and let go and just be still and let the tide pass, it will pass, and the seasons will change. And we do get the light at the end of the day, and we can breathe into that space, because we can't solve the problem with the same level of thinking that's creating the problem. Thank you, Einstein.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Exactly.
And I think that's what we keep doing. We want to keep going back in and doing it the same way, because that's what we've always done. And you even hear people say that, oh, but we've always done it that way. Well, really? How did that work for you?
Yeah. And again, it comes back to that analogy we were talking about before, Elizabeth, like with the circle. It's like, that's coming from the paradigm of the circle,
isn't it?
Yeah, the paradigm of the circle as opposed to paradigm of the spiral, and learning deeper and deeper understandings. And
that's the ripple effect, isn't it? Really, when you look at the ripple in a pond, it has that spiraling effect, and it just keeps getting bigger as it goes out wider and reaches every surface in the pond. And our Mother Earth and our human body has that energy, and that's why we get the vibration and the energy. So we need it to keep moving. We can't stop it. It stagnates and it becomes dis-ease.
That's exactly
right.
If
they're uncomfortable, it gets dis-ease.
Yeah, and like, look at me, like that's exactly what happened.
That's what the root cause of that.
That's right.
And now you've had time to go through this initiation, and you brought it to the surface, and the journey hasn't finished for you. You're now only in spring. I really would love to have you back again. I feel like let's this will be a 1 or 2 or 3 or a 4 part. Who knows? Let's not count the parts. But I feel like I'd like to have you back, and I'm sure if anybody out there has any questions for you, Renee, how can they contact you? What would you like them to do? Email you, or a private message for you, or
happy anyway? So Renee Gould Holistic Health at the moment. There will be some changes coming up, but that's the way.
Space?
Sorry, watch this space. Yeah, when I'm ready to fully step in.
That's okay.
So email, private message, phone, text.
And I'll share your links on the bottom of this podcast as well on YouTube, and I'll send that for you so you can share it through your Facebook or Instagram already, if you like, or the connection can be that they can connect it there. So, look, what I would really like people to do is I think it often stirs stuff up in people because they relate to your journey. And that's what this is about. It's about keeping it real. And when our life falls apart, it does get messy. We can't fall apart and stay pretty and clean. And, there's emotional trauma and physical, emotional, mental and spiritual trauma and growth. And with the seasons, it's the releasing, the letting go, the planting, and, and the still time. We need to know when to be still.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole reason I do the Meridian Medicine mentoring.
That's fantastic. And you're still doing that, Renee?
So I am. It's been online mainly, and especially like through COVID as well. So that was been something. But this time,
in some ways, that was a gift, wasn't it?
It was a gift. It was an absolute gift. It really was for me. I took a lot of gifts out of that time, but I've transitioning it from online. I'm actually bringing it in person to Yes to Health at Narellan through summer. And it's going to be like a short 4-week intensive journey work through like understanding the meridians, the seasons, the cycles, what's going on at that time, and how to bring that medicine.
I'm going to be there. Book me in. I'm going to do it.
Awesome.
I'm going to walk this next year. I'm going to do another spiral, another season, another. Because I bring it through my paintings like that. So who knows? One day it would be fantastic to do something with you.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, definitely.
That's what that will lead to.
Yes, I know. So that one will be in January. So I've just put it.
Excited. What day?
So January the 5th. So it'll be 4 Thursday nights, January the 5th, and then consecutive weeks after that for 4 weeks, from 6:30 to 8:30. So 2 hours a session. There'll be lots of embodied practices, so qigong practices, meditation, acutonics, which is the tuning forks, any way where we can get like the chi and blood moving through the meridians to.
This is great.
And because I know it works, because like that's what I've been doing, you know. And so we work through a succession of starting with.
I want you to put the link on this so that people can book in and pay for it.
Yes.
You know, and so how much is each session, or do you pay for it with the 4 sessions?
You pay for it for 4 because you need to go through the 4 successions
and I think that's important.
Mental, emotional, and spiritual layers, and how to kind of move it through. So it's an introductory offer at the moment of $200 just for the.
Fantastic.
So it's really reasonable, really, you know, because we are coming off.
Is that just for today? You know, like for this week?
I could say that. But no, it was more for trying to make it affordable for people, and also coming off the back of Christmas. Because, you know, even the online mentoring is more expensive than that. And this is going to be a lot more immersive, a lot more, you know, one-on-one kind of interaction that you'll get. So, you know, it's pretty good value, but I know it works, and I just want to share it with people because
I think that's exciting. Thank you so much for your time today, darling. I'm really excited to follow the next part of your season, and I think, you know, we'll get you back maybe in the early of 2023 to give you time to go through your summer. So we might reconnect in the height of summer. So what is the height of summer? What date is that for you?
Well, I kind of do look at, because, you know, we're technically in summer now, right?
Yeah, but
according to that calendar. But once we go up and we head towards like the summer solstice, for me is kind of like that's the heart of it. But interestingly enough, in TCM, we have 2 seasons in summer.
Oh, really?
So we have summer, and then after solstice, it goes into late summer. And there's just a little bit of difference there in the energy. Like summer is the most yang, right? So there's like, you know, and it's hot and it's sun and it's light and it's all the things and it's all the bloom. And then as we have that little pivot into late summer, that's when we start to, you know, when we get that really humid heat, we start to get that real sweltering. So that wetness, right, is the yin that starts to come in and dance with the yang. So rather than being the dry, hot heat of yang, we then have the yin that comes in, and they start to dance together and create this heat and humidity. But then we go into the full abundance. So it's like all of the abundance, like it's a yummy part.
I think everybody is ready for that, you know.
Yeah, I think we're already, we want to reap what we've sown, right?
100%. So but if we don't sow it, we're not going to reap it.
Exactly.
And we know how to store it too. We've got to learn to store energy as well. And so that we have it then for the winter, letting go of what we don't need and then going into hibernation.
Yeah.
Thank you, darling.
It's
been absolutely, totally fabulous having you here today. And I'm so looking forward to hearing the next chapter of your story.
Excellent. I'm happy for you to come along and join me.
I'm going to be there. Cut me in. I'm doing it.
Fantastic.
I have to do my own work. Otherwise, I can't show others how to do it. And I think it's great to put ourselves into that space. And, you know, I think everybody puts us on pedestals, but really we're just absolutely human doing our own work. And I think sometimes the more work you do, the bigger the initiation and the bigger the challenges, and it forces us. And, you know, like I've been feeling a million times I could give this up and I could just get a job selling shoes.
Oh, me too.
Then a friend said, but Elizabeth, you'd fix their feet, you know, or you've got feet, you know, like just as your soul journey. That's what I said. It's Chiron's curse. The wounded healer has to, we become the healer through our own wounds. And in 100%. Doing that, I think, and that's the purpose of my podcast, Slaying the Dragon, is to put it out there for people to see that our world is always the answer to our calling. Our world will fall apart. We will get out of that using our own resources. And how was that for you? You know, and you look back and you see the gift. If your world didn't fall apart, you wouldn't be where you are today.
Oh, look, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And would you give any part of your life up in the past to return back? Would you give any part of your life up today to return back to any part of your past?
No, because you can't anyway. Like that would be an illusion anyway. But no, I wouldn't, because I would not have found, you know, parts within me that were so desperately crying for my attention and help and healing and just
now,
yeah. And so, you know, I think, well, if I had have left that and stayed as is, those wounds would have still been sitting there festering, and I would not.
that's when we push them down and we go into drugs, alcohol, shopping, sex,
and
whatever,
it's just it's pain.
distraction.
It's a pain cycle. It's a pain cycle. And again, coming back to the circle, it's that. And I was like, I've got to get off this freaking. I can't do this. And I was literally at that point. I can't do this anymore. Vroom. Away you go then. I was like, oh shit, here we go. Hang on for your hats. But
thank you, gorgeous girl.
Thank you so much.
Face again soon. Thank you, and fantastic, Renee Gould. Talk to you soon.
Thank
Bye
you,
for now.
Okay.
Bye.